Welcome back to the, can we call it the ARCA Zoom Cat? Yeah, why not? It is the ARCA show. Well, kind of. We'll talk about more things on here. I'm Casey Campbell. That's Mitchell Breuer of Black Cat Sports and whatever else. So how's it going, bud?
It's going good. How are yourself?
Doing well. So we're kind of just like, we're in the off week. So I felt like it'd be good to talk about just how the seasons are kind of going so far, for all these series. Plus, I know it's not quite the off week. Yes, ARCA is racing at Berlin. But it's I mean, the top three are off this week. So overall, how do you think the 75th season of NASCAR is going so far?
I mean, I think it's going good. I think that it's been kind of a calmer season across all three series. But I mean, that's kind of what you expect when you get kind of this part of the season where we're kind of in that summer stretch where it's kind of like the calm before the storm, where you'll start to hear like finalized silly season plans. You'll start to get that rush for the playoffs. It's a lot of that anticipation that's building up. And like me and you had talked about before we started recording this, I gotta give credit to NASCAR and the schedule producers for this year, because they've got enough to make it still like it's not just like we're just carrying on with the show just to get to the playoffs. There's still a lot of exciting things coming up and a lot of exciting twists with the schedule that are coming up. But right now, it's just kind of that quiet point of the season.
Yeah. And that usually gets there. I mean, obviously the off week and then NBC takes over the Cup and Xfinity portions. Obviously, Fox will have the rest of the Truck Series season, and also they'll have for the first time ever, they'll have also the rest of the ARCA season as well. So there. So what have you noticed so far in the Cup Series so far this year? I think in the first 16 races of the year.
Biggest thing that I've noticed is that we've been waiting I feel like everybody's been kind of waiting a long time for a William Byron breakout type season, and this feels like that's this year. Yeah, he's not quite leading the points yet, but something you've noticed, and I think this weekend at Sonoma is really the first race that we really haven't seen William Byron really be that close in contention for wins. Other than that, though, even if he's not the most dominant car on the racetrack, you'll get to stage three with like 50 laps to go, and all of a sudden the 24 car will be out front, and you're just like, where in the world did this guy come from? Has he been here the entire time? That this is a guy that I think if I had to pick somebody that's going to win the championship right now, that would be the guy to do it. And I don't think a lot of people would be saying that ahead of this season. I think you look at Hendrick Motorsports, you kind of think of the Kyle Larson, you think of the Chase Elliott, you even think of Alex Bowman, who had a really strong season a couple seasons ago. You didn't really think about William Byron, and William Byron's really stepped out of his shell, and he's really became a guy that's going to be a threat to win a title this year. On the flip side of that, you kind of look at Chase Elliott. Yeah, he's had the injury. Yeah, he got suspended, but there's not been one particular race where it's been like, oh, Chase Elliott's going to either A, win this race, or B, really be the guy that could win this race. And that's something that I think everybody's keeping a close eye on as we carry into the second half of this season, is when and if Chase Elliott can actually get back to victory lane and get back to where we all think he should be.
Yeah. So obviously things that have surprised you, things that have not really done of that, but what are your biggest surprises of the year? And these can be good or bad.
There's definitely a couple. I think one of the biggest surprises, and maybe it's a little underlooked, but Corey LaJoie and Inspire Motorsports, man, that team, like, I know they're not like in the top 20 in points right now, but if you go back a year ago, they weren't even in the top 30 in points. And now they're a top 25 team, and Corey LaJoie is running in the top 15 a lot more consistently. He's been a guy that has surprised me a lot. Other guys that have surprised me, Roush Fenway Keselowski Racing, and I think you could throw JTG Racing in there as well.
Yeah.
Both of those teams, like, yeah, Stenhouse won the 500 and it was probably going to make the playoffs regardless of how the rest of the season went. But those three teams, all of them are like legit playoff contenders. And like Brad and Chris Buescher, those guys are probably going to make the playoffs unless we just start getting a lot of brand new winners, which it really doesn't appear that's going to be the case this season. So those three guys, they're not only likely going to make the playoffs this season, but they have a chance to be legitimate. Like they could make it a couple of rounds in the playoffs this season. They've all looked very, very good this season.
Most definitely. Yeah, I mean, and now obviously those teams, you might as well add Front Row Motorsports into the mix too. They've put up
That's
some
true
solid
too.
results. But then you look at teams like obviously, Penske's been struggling this year. You look at, and then the other one I can think of is, obviously Stewart Haas Racing, but outside of Kevin Harvick, who continues to just, get out of his equipment, those two teams have really just, I don't know. It's just who knows what could happen with them.
No, absolutely. And it's very curious with Penske right now because, like, we saw the Coca-Cola 600 where Ryan Blaney went out and dominated.
Yeah.
We've seen Joey Logano be at least consistent enough where he's still towards the front of the pack. But then there's weeks like this weekend at Sonoma, they weren't a threat at all. And you could call it a sophomore slump for Austin Cindric, but me and you both know that this dude is a legit beast at road courses, and he was nowhere to be found yesterday. And I remember looking at the scoring pylon at one point, and him and Harrison Burton, who I mean is Wood Brothers, but still Penske affiliated, they were in the 30s, and that's just like something's got to change here for that team because it's not good. And I mean, you pointed out Storehouse Racing even with Kevin Harvick carrying the team, the rest of them, man, it's been brutal, and it's getting to the point where like you see like Eric Almirola and Ryan Preece have success in lower series, and when they win, it's a big deal. Like this may sound a little harsh, Casey, but it shouldn't be a big deal when these guys that are driving for Stewart Haas Racing win in lower series. They should be Storehouse Racing is a team that's won multiple championships and been championship contenders for over a decade now.
Yeah.
They shouldn't be teams that are struggling to stay in the top 25 in points. And obviously, Chase Briscoe had his big penalty. That big penalty came when he manufactured a part for the Coca-Cola 600, a race where he was completely irrelevant and he was in the 30s. Like,
Yeah.
It's tough, man. These teams, and it could be a Ford thing. It could definitely be that. But man, something's got to change over there. It's starting. You don't want it to feel like, oh, we're just looking to next season. But right now, if something doesn't change quick, there's four cars there that could be definitely looking towards next season, and we're in June right now.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely, teams are already, speaking of next season, obviously those talks are going to probably get started here in the next, I mean, technically they've already started. So that'll be obviously something to watch toward there. Let's go to Xfinity now. I think the biggest story of that year is just, Joe Gibbs Racing. They've really just they've gotten solid results. And I think the biggest story was that Junior Motorsports wasn't winning. And then, the last few weeks, knock on wood, they've really been, really performing well. But obviously the biggest story of the season was they weren't winning and everybody else was. Austin Hill still has 3 wins on the season. Chandler's got a win. Obviously the 2 Toyota drive, all 3 Joe Gibbs cars have wins. So, and then Cole Custer picked up his first win of the season. So where are we at in Xfinity now? Because it looks like everyone's just been solidly doing well. I don't think there's been a team that's really has been, struggling like team wise, obviously driver wise, of course, but they're really
and that's kind of the interesting thing with the Xfinity series right now, where we talked about like if I had to pick somebody to win Cup, I could probably pick Bowyer. Right now, I don't know if I could pick anybody as a definitive like favorite in the Xfinity series as a championship contender. Yeah, John Hunter Nemechek's ran pretty good all season long, but like you said, Junior Motorsports is starting to quietly come alive, and like this weekend at Sonoma, really like we saw Sam Mayer really have a really good run, and those get this. That's a team that like you start they start putting together consistency, they could be a championship contender pretty quickly. And the really interesting one that you brought up was Chandler Smith. And why I say that's interesting is that he's been really good and maybe kind of fallen off a little bit in the recent weeks. But beginning of the season, he was looking like a guy that could win each and every week. But the rest of Kaulig racing, Daniel Hemrick is barely holding on to a playoff spot right now. And even when you bring Cup guys in there, like Kyle Busch has ran a couple of races in Kaulig racing Xfinity cars with no wins and not really the dominant performances we expect to see. And it's just been interesting. Like that's a team that it's been, and you could say that for Cup too, has been kind of a disappointment this season outside of Chandler Smith.
Yeah. Well, taking a look at the grid right now, and you mentioned, yeah, I know Barry lost points. I know Barry did not have a good day at Sonoma, but I mean, he's still 91 points to the good. Sheldon Creed's 80 points to the good. You know, a few weeks ago, Sam Mayer was outside of the playoff grid, and now he's 41 points above it. Yeah,
Yep.
he did not have a good, yeah, he didn't have the best Charlotte race, but, you know, he led laps at Darlington, had a good solid run at Dover. You know, had really, you know, he had a shot to win Portland unless if those things didn't happen toward the end of the race, and then having a solid run at Sonoma. You know, that one team's really, really picking up stuff. And obviously, when you look at the road courses, there's going to be a lot of them coming up in the next few weeks for the Xfinity Series, because we had Portland, Sonoma, and of course Chicago Street Course. Well, it's a street course, but yes, you know what I mean. Road America's coming up. They got the Indy Road Course, Watkins Glen. So they're good. That series is going to see a lot of road courses coming up in the next, you know, few weeks, as well as the Cup Series, with the exception of Road America. But yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting to see what happens here. And the guy that's outside the cut line, who I think I'm not counting out. Yeah, I'm not counting out Brandon Jones just yet. I know he's 27 out, but he's been putting some good runs together. And then Parker Kligerman could go out and get a win. Like, yeah, who knows what Chicago is going to be like? That could be a prime opportunity for one of these guys to go get a win. The Cup guys aren't going to be in that race, but they'll be in just about everyone else. But it's definitely going to be interesting to see what happens here, because we got Nashville, Chicago, Atlanta, New Hampshire, Pocono, Road America, Michigan. It's there's going to be some good tracks coming up for Xfinity as they inch closer. And now we're only 12 races out of the playoffs for that series, so should be interesting to watch. Let's go to trucks now. It's, you know, that series only has 4 races left in the regular season. They were off for I know they were off last week, and obviously they'll be off this week. They'll be back at Nashville, but there's only 4 more races left in that season. 2 of them will not. Obviously, this race is the last part of the Triple Truck Challenge, but you know, you got Mid Ohio. That's a standalone race, and then you got Pocono and Richmond to really close out the season. And what are we going to expect in that series?
It's another series where I'm just waiting for somebody to stand out and be the guy that could be a favorite for the championship right now. And even if you look at the regular season point standings, you've got Corey Heim, who flat out missed the last Truck Series race. He's still the points leader in that series. Yeah. And it's just like, he's the points leader, but really, like, you don't think of like Corey Heim as like someone that has like dominated the season or anything like that. Or like, if you would tell me that Corey Heim went out and skipped a race, well, didn't skip, but missed a race and still leading the points, I'd be kind of surprised, because I don't think it's just been like, oh, the Corey Heim show. It's another one of those where it's just like, we're waiting for somebody to break out, and the Truck Series is kind of getting that chaotic reputation right now, where it's kind of just more so surviving to be at the end of these races, which, I mean, you look at even like a Zane Smith right now, he's 4th in the regular season standings.
Right.
Like, I think everybody kind of expected him to dominate, but he's been caught up in that chaos as well this season.
Yeah, and you look at the standings right now. I mean, Obviously Corey Haim's got to win. He's in. Enfinger's in. Zane's in. Ben Rhodes, Eckes, Hocevar. But then you look at guys like Majeski. He's probably going to be. He's got a big points cushion, and it's going to be. I don't think it'll be that long until he gets a win this year because that 98 team's been really good. Crafton's 25 above. Friesen's 18 plus 18. Obviously, what a comeback season for him. And then DiBenedetto's plus 11. And then Tanner Gray's got that last spot, 4 above. And then you look down in the bottom, Nick Sanchez is not that far out, and -4. And then you
Sanchez,
got
Nick Sanchez, a guy that should have probably won Texas this year, is out of the playoffs right now. That's wild as well. That just shows how crazy this series can be. I'm not saying that in a negative way. It's just it's the Wild West out there where
it is.
You got to survive these races. If you survive, you might have a chance at making the playoffs right now. Again, you look at guys like a Tanner Gray, who I don't think has had like the most spectacular of seasons, but all of a sudden he's just survived these races, gotten good quality finishes. He's in the playoffs right now over somebody like a Nick Sanchez, which is just kind of wild to think about.
Yeah. And obviously it also shows the Tricon garage team has really improved. Obviously Corey Haim, I think we all expected that he would do well, but obviously I think that this probably was a big year for Tanner. Obviously didn't have the best year last year, but now coming into the fold with, really the same team. Obviously, Toyota's a part of, that's why it's called Tricon Garage with the 3 owners. But it's just showing that, the 17's really picking up. Dean Thompson's has gotten faster out there, and whoever's in that one truck's been pretty good as well. So, Chase Purdy is 31 out. By the way, Jake Garcia's 51 out. Then you start going down the road. You get Ankram's 72 out, Raj's 89 out, and Deegan is 100. So we're really getting to that point where these guys really need to start getting wins, because Nashville's coming up, another prime opportunity. None of the Xfinity or Cup guys will be in that race, since this is a triple truck challenge race. So and then Mid-Ohio is obviously a standalone race. So it's the next 2 weeks are 2 prime opportunities to get a win. Pocono will be coming up soon. I believe Kyle Busch is in that race. And then of course Richmond, and then we're in the playoffs. So it's coming down to crunch time for the trucks.
Absolutely. And you name a couple of those guys underneath the playoff cut line, they could go out and steal a win at these races where, like, it hasn't been the best season for somebody like a Raja Karuth or Haley Deegan, but there's been flashes where they've been inside the top 10. They still race for GMS and ThorSport. All they need is that one like magical moment. They're in the playoffs, and I think you could even throw somebody like a Daniel Dye in there as well too. Yeah. You can't count out these big teams that are just hanging out outside. Even Chase Purdy, he's like, again, when he survived these races, he's close to the front of the field. All you need is a Texas-like situation where the leaders crash. All of a sudden, you got somebody like Carson Hocevar in victory lane. That could happen for one of these guys that's outside the cut line right now. I think it could get real crazy real fast right now. If I was a Tanner Gray or a Matt DiBenedetto, I wouldn't feel safe at all.
Yeah. Yeah, that's Nashville. I mean, obviously, going to Nashville, it's going to be it's going to be a pretty interesting race. And you mentioned Daniel Dye. He's 102 out. Colby Howard's 104 out. Taylor Gray's and then Taylor Gray in 20th at 119. So those guys could get a win.
Gray, another one.
Yeah, that's it's definitely going to be there. And we're going to Mid-Ohio. Taylor Gray, of course, won the ARCA race there last year. So I'd expect Taylor to really pick up some solid results coming up here. I know he obviously missed some races because he obviously wasn't old enough, but it's gonna be interesting.
He's one of those guys. You think about last year, he almost won IRP. I think you go to Richmond, I think he's got a shot at winning that race as well. Like I said, this cut line could get real crazy real fast.
Yeah, it's going to get there, like we're seeing in the Cup Series, and who knows, Xfinity could get really close as well.
That's
you
true.
Know. So I
That's
mean,
true.
that's what that's why we love the format. So you look at ARCA. Let's talk about them. They're actually racing this week. They'll be at Berlin Raceway out in the west side of the state. What's that going to be like? To go out there, and you're definitely going to see. This is kind of that main point of the season where you're definitely going to see that series running just about every week.
No, absolutely. And this is the part of the season where it gets fun for the Arkham Art series because you have so many races and so much time to really see who is going to do what in this series. And all of a sudden, you're going to have a lot more competition for old Jesse Love, who has kind of dominated the last couple of races here. But you're going to have William Swallich come in. He's going to have a lot more seat time in this series.
Yeah.
I think he's going to be a threat to win a couple of these races as well. And the other fun thing about this is that you have short tracks and road courses, which can produce attrition, man. And all of a sudden, let's say the 18 and Jesse Love get into an incident. We have a Phoenix-like situation where there is a number of guys that are just chomping at the bit that could potentially win one of these races. And I mean, it's going to get really fun. It's going to get really exciting. I'm really excited to see how Frankie Muniz continues to progress in this series. I think, and I know a lot of people were talking about how he could potentially win the championship. I think if he just continues to go out and just have a season like he's had where, yeah, maybe he's not leading laps, but he's finishing races. He's on the lead lap.
Yeah.
He's doing what he needs to do to survive these races. I mean, even you go back and look at the last race, I believe at Charlotte, it wasn't a great day for that 30 team. I think he was even a lap down at some point. He went out, got a free pass, and then ended up, I believe, like 6th or 7th in that race. It's been pretty impressive for that team. Obviously, it's tough to deal with those guys flying that dang flag over there, but you're still seeing some pretty impressive stuff from Frankie Muniz. But yeah, and again, Jesse Love, Casey, we've known this for years that this kid is just so stinking good. And even in his truck debut, he looked really good. It's going to be tough to stop him. And it's going to be interesting to see how he handles this time and how he handles a little bit of competition from those old guys at Joe Gibbs Racing and how he can handle dominating. Because it feels like this is a point in the season where 2 years ago we saw Ty Gibbs just go into full I am the guy mode, which I'm very intrigued to see if we can see Jesse Love, because like it's easy to say Jesse Love can win the rest of these races. We said that about Ty Gibbs. Ty Gibbs lost a lot of races in the Arkham Nard series. It's going to be interesting to see what Jesse Love does, and there's a lot to be excited about with this Arkham Nard series.
Yeah, of course. I'll mention a few others. I mean, Sean Hingorani's I believe is in this race as well. So obviously, I know he and the 18 have a little bit of a history there too. Going back to Flat Rock. But and then of course you got Andres Perez Dolara. He'll be of course in there as well. And then you got all these, and then you'll see guys like there'll be a second rev car once we get in those combination East races with LeVar Scott, and then the PRG team with Luke Fenhouse for a couple of those races as well. So it's gonna it's gonna get competitive really, really fast in these next few weeks. And plus, who knows? I mean, in a couple of these races, you're going to see some of the truck guys in there. You might see them at Mid Ohio when they go there in about a month's time. And then who knows what could happen?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, Mitchell, thank you so much for coming on and talking with us. And we will talk to you very, very soon.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me.